Missing 43 students, a crime of the state. The Rural Teachers College of Ayotzinapa is a synonym for rebellion and a breeding ground of social activists. For decades, it has given shelter and training to sons of rural workers from the poorest areas in southeast Mexico. Generations of students have come through its classrooms, seeing the possibilities of entering into a dignified profession as teachers in training and of playing important roles in the development of their communities. Yet students at rural colleges quickly learn that their diplomas from this place will do little to close the chasm between their lives and those of the rich and powerful. The Ayotzis were a rowdy and aggressive bunch. People called them troublemakers, tolerated but hardly loved in the region. They often carried sticks, covered their faces with bandanas, and took over toll booths to demand payment for the revolution. Whenever they needed to travel as a group to a protest march somewhere, they would commandeer buses, leaving the passengers stranded on the asphalt. On Friday, September 26, 2014, about 100 students left their campus in 2 previously requisitioned buses and went in search of several more in preparation for an upcoming demonstration in Mexico City that takes place every year. It marks the anniversary of a massacre on October 2, 1968, when Army gunned down hundreds of demonstrators at an anti-government rally. For the young Ayotzis, their search for transportation must have felt heroic. Bus takeovers were a frequent event. That morning, the students managed to take over 3 buses bound for the downtown Iguala terminal. That was when the killing started. So, what had happened on the night of 26th of September? Shortly after 9 o'clock on that night of September 26, 2014, Ayotzinapa students on 5 buses, the 2 they had arrived in and the 3 they had commandeered in Iguala, began driving to the city center. One of the buses was heading towards south, while 4 other buses were heading towards north. When they noticed police following them, one of the 4 buses split up as their terrified drivers tried to turn onto narrow downtown streets that led back to the highway. The other 3 of the buses ignored the tailing police cars and later arrived at an intersection where a police car was parked at the middle of that intersection. Several students got out of the bus and tried to move the police car that was blocking the road. Then a student suddenly fell to the ground. The others beside him remembers looking dumbly at the red-hot spent casings all around him and thinking at first that they were fireworks. Then they saw blood pooling. "He's dying!" students yelled, asking the police to help, still not grasping the situation. A student somewhere screamed, bleeding from a bullet wound to the hand. Another, lung, and he was in the throes of a severe panic attack, unable to breathe. Then the police started bringing the students down from the bus, hands behind their necks, a total 15 of them. Police pickups had moved into place behind that bus, lights flashing. Officers forced the students to lie face down on the sidewalk, then loaded them in the backs of their pickups. Those lucky ones that escaped would never see their classmates again. The students traveling on the other 2 buses were blocked off, one under a bridge in front of the state courthouse and another only a few hundred meters behind. Police attacked the first bus, shooting tear gas through the windows to force students out. These students were handcuffed and loaded onto pickups, some of them belonging to police officers, and many others belonged to, surprisingly, a Mexican criminal syndicate called Guerreros Unidos. Members of the federal police stood by as the scene unfolded. An intelligence agent from one of the nearby battalions pulled up on a motorbike, took a few photos on his cell phone, and went back to inform his superiors. The army had at least one soldier acting as an informant, who had infiltrated the student body and was with the group that disappeared. But no one intervened. Seeing how things unfold, definitely not in their favor, the students that were on the other bus decided to fled to nearby housing area, and yet the violence was far from over. On a road out of Iguala, members of the Guerreros Unidos and the police mistakenly attacked a bus carrying a junior league soccer team which was heading home to celebrate a victory. Before the attackers realized that there were no Ayotzis on the bus, they shot and killed the driver, a 15-year-old player, and a woman in a passing taxi. Around the same time, a group of Ayotzis raced to Iguala to see what was happening to their schoolmates. They were holding an impromptu street corner press conference when several vehicles arrived, and armed men dressed in black jumped out and opened fire on them. The shots were registered on a reporter's audio. 2 students lay on the ground, dead. Patrol cars roamed the streets in the pre-dawn silence of Saturday the 27th. Police calling out to the remaining Ayotzis, "We know you're hiding." Sometime after midnight, military vehicles arrived at a building, and a cluster of soldiers muscled their way in, fanned out, and pointed machine guns at the students that were hiding in it. The soldiers were led by Jose Martinez Crespo, who collaborated with the Guerreros Unidos. By midnight, 43 Ayotzis were in the hands of local police forces. They were seen being escorted into a building. Then, all 43 students vanished into thin air, and no one ever saw them again. Investigators pulled this account together slowly in the course of years, cross-checking hundreds of interviews with survivors, eyewitnesses, and participants in the events. This is what happened to the 43 students. The 3 buses that they hijacked on the night of 20th of September belonged to Guerreros Unidos. The buses were strapped with cocaine and drugs ready to be transported to the nearby border. Unbeknown to the reckless Ayotzis, Guerreros Unidos and their leader, the mayor of the southern city of Iguala, were eager to have their buses back. A document released by the Mexican Defense Ministry reaffirmed their findings. In it shows a text exchange between Iguala police official and a leader of the Guerreros Unidos. "There are 21 people inside the bus that's leaving," the policeman says, and the leader replies, "Yes, hand me all the detainees." Some investigators believe that the decision to kill the students was made before dawn. The Guerreros Unidos member who turned state's witness said the order they received from above was to do away with them. Sometime in the early hours of September 27th, the students were cut into pieces. Then the remains were taken to local funeral homes to be cremated. An informant told investigators that it took several days to ensure that the remains were cremated thoroughly enough that no one would be able to identify them. 8 years later, on August 18th, 2022, up to that moment, it had seemed that justice was within reach. As the meeting with the president was starting, the 43 missing students representative team was requesting warrants for the arrest of 83 participants in the events. Among them were Guerreros Unidos members, soldiers, police officers, the magistrate, a judge in Chilpancingo, the state attorney general at the time, and the commanders of the 2 Iguala battalions. But to no avail. The investigation into the disappearance of the 43 has come to an end. The truth is obvious now, however. No major culprit was put into jail or even charged. So what do you think? In a place where case files are lost or abandoned, investigations are cursory, criminal syndicates are protected and accepted, can we truly call it a state?